All right, folks, you're going to have to take this one with a grain of salt because it is coming from exclusively pro-Trump sources at this point. But they also would be the most likely to leak this kind of information. There are reports now that DeSantis' own super PAC, the so-called Never Back Down PAC, could pivot away from supporting his campaign in favor of supporting a different candidate. Now, for those of you who don't understand how the PAC system works here in the U.S., it was created by the Supreme Court decision, Citizens United v. whatever. Was it Citizens United v. McCain, or was it Citizens United v. U.S.? Something like that. Anyway, the Citizens United case. Essentially, what we ended up with, the precedent set after that decision, was that unlimited amounts of money can be spent by private organizations and private individuals on political causes. Now, you're still limited in how much you can donate to any given candidate directly, but these super PACs essentially became indirect ways of donating to candidates. So someone who wants to stroke $1 million check to Ron DeSantis' campaign can't just do that. The cap is like $1,600 a person or something, or maybe it's $7,200. I forget what it is. It's in the four figures, I think. They could strike a $1 million check to the Never Back Down PAC. And then that $1 million would be used by the Never Back Down PAC to produce pro-DeSantis ads or something like that. But since these PACs are not, they have to be by law completely sealed off from these actual campaigns. They can't be directly associated with DeSantis. He can't have any part in their operations, and no one person can work both for the DeSantis campaign and for this pro-DeSantis super PAC. And so theoretically, they can support whoever they want. This PAC has no legal allegiance or anything like that. There is no guarantee that when your money is donated to one of these PACs that they're actually going to spend that money on supporting that candidate. In fact, the PAC could just spend all the money on salaries for their executives if they want, just like a charity. We have these bad charities that 50% of their budget or more, 80% of their donations go to overhead, so-called. Paying for a fancy office, paying for a high salary CEO. And so the super PAC could just on a dime say, you know what, we're going to start putting out ads in support of Tim Scott, as this article points out, or even Glenn Youngkin, someone who's not running for president. But those of you might remember, it was not so long ago that DeSantis wasn't running for president. We are very early in this process. There have been no debates yet, and there's certainly been no primary races. No actual contest. There's been no Iowa caucus, no New Hampshire primary, none of that. And so there's no reason why more candidates couldn't get into the race, because as I talked about earlier this week, or over the weekend, whatever, maybe it was yesterday, all the days blend together, DeSantis is having trouble standing out from the pack. And that's going to be the main issue in the upcoming debate when Donald Trump doesn't show up. DeSantis is going to be grouped in at the kids' table with all of the single-digit midgets. And so no one of them, if DeSantis isn't breaking out, none of these folks seem to be breaking out of the field and actually posing a direct threat to Donald Trump's nomination. And there is a lot of money in this country on the Republican side that is committed to nominating someone other than Trump. They don't care who it is. DeSantis wouldn't have been their first choice if they didn't think that he was the most likely to beat Trump. And so now that DeSantis is proving that he's not very competitive against Trump, at least so far, the fact that he's faltering could mean that they're going to find a fresh face. They're going to find someone who they think can beat Trump in a primary, and they're going to start. Now, that doesn't mean that they're right, but they're going to start putting their money somewhere else. If the money dries up for DeSantis, he could turn out to be the Scott Walker of 2024. Scott Walker was a very well-known nationally Republican governor from Wisconsin. He won in by a considerable margin in a state that was considered to be a blue state, still is a blue state, but he won it by decent enough. He outperformed, Republicans there. Sound familiar? He won election 3 times because he won first, on his in 2010, I think it was. Then he won, he had to beat back a recall election, and then I think he won re-election after that, and then it was when he ran for a 3rd term that he finally lost. But he was the sitting governor of Wisconsin when he ran for president in 2016. It was actually 2015. And he was seen as, hey, this is one of the more serious guys. He's gotten a lot accomplished, at the state level in Wisconsin in a very difficult environment. He's proved that, he's a pretty effective leader. And what happened? The money dried up quick. He spent it all. Poof. And it was over. Scott Walker was out of the race. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. And the same thing could end up happening to Desantis. And I'm not going to cheer for that, obviously. I like the guy. He's one of the better people running. The top 3 to me are him, Vivek, and Trump. The rest of them I don't think I would really even consider voting for, unless there's someone I'm just not thinking about who's like at 1% who might be a good person. But like, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, Mike Pence, if they were somehow the Republican nominee, I'm not voting. Not going to do it. No, thank you. And so I don't come out and bash DeSantis because I hate him. I come out and bash him because he deserves it, because that's just the facts right now. The facts are not on his side. And so Glenn Youngkin, who was talked about as a candidate before DeSantis got in, but ultimately, I think he probably thought it best not to get in because DeSantis seemed to be like a more viable candidate. Well, now that DeSantis no longer looks like a viable challenger to Trump, there may be people in Youngkin's ear saying, hey, you know what? You still got a chance. And Youngkin, again, like Scott Walker, he won in a blue state. He's working in a difficult environment. And so he seems like someone who's, who's supremely electable because of that. They love to take these, the donors see a blue state Republican governor generally as someone who's very electable. They did the same thing with Romney. They said, well, look, he won in Massachusetts. If he can win there, he can win anywhere. And you look at Glenn Youngkin, he won in Virginia. Is there any scenario, electoral college-wise, where the Republican candidate wins Virginia and doesn't become president? Because Virginia's a tough get. That's a tough place to win. If you somehow pull off a win in Virginia, which hasn't been done since 2004, odds are you're going to pick up, or I shouldn't say odds are, you're going to end up picking up the states that are less, that are less to the left, or I should say more to the right. That's the way to say it. All the states to the right of Virginia, you're probably going to pick up if you're winning Virginia. And in that case, you're getting well over 300 electoral votes. Trump won, 306 in 2016 without winning Virginia. And so, I can see why the Republican donors would be very happy about someone like Glenn Youngkin. And I think that on the base level, they relate much more to Glenn Youngkin than Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is only in the position he's in because they thought he's electable. It's the only reason why the money would get behind him. It's not because they like DeSantis' message. It's not because they like how he's governed. They just wanted, hey, whoever the guy who can beat Trump is, that's who we're going to pick. That's where all the money is. But ideologically, culturally, they're much more in line with Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin is the ex-CEO of the Carlyle Group, which has connections to 9/11 and the Bin Laden family. So that's just telling you what level of elite Glenn Youngkin is. He wears the fleece vest, like you see all of the venture capital bros donning. And so he's got access to money. He can raise money. If anyone is going to come in and push DeSantis aside, throw him into the dustbin of history, it's going to be Glenn Youngkin. Now, do I think Glenn Youngkin can beat Donald Trump in a primary? No. I think he has less of a chance than DeSantis. I think that, when he made the decision not to run before, that was the correct one. He realized, hey, DeSantis has a better chance of beating Trump than I do. So if DeSantis has a better chance, or if I have less of a chance than him, it doesn't make sense for me to run. And I think DeSantis still has a better chance of beating Donald Trump in a primary than Glenn Youngkin. So that should tell you how small Glenn Youngkin's chances actually are. The Rockefeller... Oh my gosh, I can't speak today. Am I having a stroke? The Rockefeller Republicans have deep pockets, but they don't have a lot of votes. They're very few and far between. So anyway, let's see where all this goes. I'm interested in whether or not this comes to pass. So with that said, I will keep following this, and I will see you folks back here tomorrow.